So welcome to the Node.js Next 10 meeting for March 20th, 2024. We'll follow our standard agenda of going through the issues that were tagged in the issue created in the GitHub repo, which was issue number 258. But before we get going, does anybody have any announcements or news they'd like to share? Okay, sounds like we don't have any news this week. We don't have too many people here, so I'm not sure if we'll be able to cover all of the different agenda items, but we'll cover what we can and go from there. The first one is the survey 2024. This is issue number 250. It was opened by Jean a little while back, and I see that Amal added the link to the previous survey, which we did around April. So it has been about a year. That was quite a useful survey. So I do agree that it would be great to redo a survey. So kind of what we should figure out is what is our next step in terms of the survey questions. Probably we want to basically go through and get consensus on well, what would the survey questions be for this year?
Maybe we can start by creating a PR with the same questions of last year, and we can work together on that PR too.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Do you want to volunteer to do that?
Yep, I can do that.
Sounds good. Let me just take a notes there that Marco will create PR with questions from last year, starting point to discuss. Agree. And I guess the other thing is we should probably figure out when we think we'll be ready, because we should give the foundation staff a heads up that we'd like to do this again this year.
I think we can I can open the PR this week and we can discuss it in next meetings. I would say that in 2 meetings it should be ready to go.
Okay, so sort of mid-April we should be ready to go.
Yep.
Would be ready for survey to open around mid-April. I think I will maybe once the issue's opened, I can open I'll in the Slack channel with the marketing team. I'll ask, hey, we're starting this up. Would you be able to support the survey this year? And market chat open. Yes. Okay, that sounds good. Then we'll get that going. Any other topics or things to discuss on that one? No? Okay. And thanks, Marco, for opening that PR. That's too much support. Corporate support and contribution. This is 177. This is kind of our long-standing issue. I don't think we have anything really new to discuss on that this week. Jean's not here, and I don't know if he's made had any new thoughts or anything, so nothing to discuss this week. And then create communication channels for just periodicals. Again, I don't think we really have anything too new. We are publishing stuff there. It is a little bit related to some of the advocacy discussion we did in the deep dive. So I kind of suggest we let that play out before we do anything too much more on this front. So maybe I'll just put no update on this front. Either. Now, we did have some good discussion last week. I was just looking at the minutes before the meeting, and I think what might make sense is to create a follow-ons so we don't forget what we agreed the sort of next steps from the deep dive were. So I'm just opening the issue. So So basically, right. So we basically had three things: start up the Ambassador program, messaging around the governance of the project, and corporate Node.js usage stories and studies. So I think if it makes sense to people right now while we're talking, I'm going to create an issue that is like just next steps and tag it for the agenda so that like we have that on the agenda for future meetings. That makes sense to people. Okay. Next steps from advocacy deep dive. So I'm going to create that. I'm going to tag it so it shows up on the agenda. And that would be next time. Right. Okay. Oh, and of course, the paste didn't, was not happy. So just give me a minute here to fix up the. Okay, that's good enough. I'll put that into the minutes. Top next steps. See deep dive. Issue. Try. And so we might as well just go through that as if it was on the agenda. So the ambassador program, I think Amal has volunteered to kind of kick that off. So I suggest, maybe we just wait till she's either at a meeting or has done something. I think she was possibly going to start on a bit of a like a proposal. The messaging around governance of the project scope. That's one where, we might spend a little bit of time just chatting about what makes sense. And then the third one was corporate Node.js usage stories and studies. That one, I guess we've got outlined. It's like we were thinking one a month, help identify people, have a blog post, maybe some collaborators, and have some with companies all on GitHub, issue to validate and extract the PR. So that one I think is just waiting for somebody to have some cycles volunteer to pick it up and start moving it forward. I think we were going to be like, let's open a repo where people can submit their ideas, and then we can sort of use that in the our regular sort of open source type processes to say, yeah, that makes sense, and like, yeah, okay, and then basically help by not necessarily publish them all, but like help by promoting them, right?
Yeah, also that could be done with instead of issues, could be done with discussions.
Right.
And like probably there is not even like we could use this repo like the next 10 repository for discussions, or like get a new one. Just need a place to gather those.
Right. I guess the thought, like, would that give us like issue discussions? You can't have like approval kind of things, or I guess it would be more of an informal, like, yeah, people have said yes, versus it was like, yeah, this one's approved, we're gonna move forward with it or not, right?
Well, with discussion, you can like mark something as an answer. You can close discussion, but it's not like an issue where you close as completed and close as not happening.
Right. Because I think that was at least one of the discussion was like, we could just, in terms of like discussion and approval, somebody proposes an idea or whatever, it would be in that one that like we could use the approvals to say, yeah, this is approved, so we should promote it and so forth. But I think first of all, like the next step really is to just outline the proposal. So that can all be part of that proposal in terms of how we do it. Because then I think we need to like, once we've got that proposal, in theory, I think we have some asks from the foundation in terms of like, when one of these happens, what are we going to do? Well, we want like the Node account to promote it, you know, like through the Twitter account, and make sure we've got that's kind of stuff logged, lined up. Okay. So if I have some cycles, I might try and do something, but if anybody else has got cycles, feel free to jump in there as well. The other one was the messaging around governance, project scope, etc. So that one was basically, that's all we had in terms of what we had there. So I don't know if there's any people have any thoughts, or what would that look like in terms of getting that? I think in the deep dive, just some more context, like the challenge is people seem to think that like Node is a project like many others that is like, say, funded by a company and people are paid to work on it, or that it's controlled by one company or one, you know, they seem surprised that like it's so decentralized and that it's mostly volunteer. And that leads to a mismatch in expectations, right? So we're like, okay, what can we do to get the message out there about, you know, what is the governance? How does it work? What does that mean? And so forth.
Yeah, I can certainly echo that sentiment as a first-time attendee here of the meeting. You know, the sentiment generally in my neighborhood is, you know, there is this idea that it's sort of like a Linux Foundation type, where there are people dedicated working on it, and it's sort of like hierarchical, top-down decisions are made, and the community just sort of receives the decisions with very little sort of opportunity for contribution or communication. So
yeah, and that's like the Node project in particular is way on the other scale, right? Like,
right, exactly.
I don't like the interesting thing is even the impression that foundations like have funded people to work on the project is a bit of a misnomer itself in general. So even dispelling that is useful, because like the foundations don't pay anybody to work in the, I shouldn't say they don't pay anybody. There's some exceptions, but like the model is
right.
They don't pay developers. They help with things like legal and marketing and other things. So it's like, yeah, there's, you know, just because it's part of a foundation, it certainly does not mean it's like, oh yeah, there's some people whose job it is to work on it. So
right, I think even with the Linux Foundation, it's like 2 people.
I was wondering, why don't we add to the website a little section on governance to clarify this? Okay.
Right, so I think adding a section to websites. I don't know if there's any like in the GitHub repos. Does that help, or is that probably too, like by the time you're at the repo, the GitHub repos itself, you're already a developer who might have a better appreciation. So website for sure. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would probably say that would be the case. I think most people who are going to Node on GitHub are looking to either contribute or are looking for issues or are in some way a little bit more savvy to the fact that this is an open source thing that they have a bi-directional communication line with. As opposed to the website where it's sort of strictly informational, this is the opportunity for someone to is using Node for school or work and is sort of learning more about it and understanding that this isn't something that is sort of funded by some sort of corporate entity. This is certainly community driven.
Okay, so yeah, adding a section to the website. We would probably, I guess it's like, what else can we do to try and, you know, get the word out to the right people?
I do love the discussions earlier of the communication channels, I think, and what was the other thing that was sort of brought up? I have it here. Certainly corporate support, contribution, but I think just in general, I think having that communication, Amel is obviously very big in advocacy and communication, and having more of voices in the community like that are dispelling these sort of common myths,
right?
With the Node Foundation, I think would be really great.
Okay, yeah, like certainly we ramp up the advocacy program. One of the things I have in mind is like we should have a list of messages we would like to get out further. This particular, like the governance could be one on that list that we're like, everybody, when you're doing your advocacy, if you can squeeze this in somehow, you know, please do. And yeah.
Absolutely.
I wonder, like, if an ask, like, okay, we add something to the website, we want, I think like a reasonable ask in my mind would be to say, like, okay, we want the Node Twitter account once a month, whatever, once every 2 months, to sort of make a tweet that says, like, remember, you know, the project is run as blah blah blah, right? Here's a link to that thing on the website, right? Does that seem reasonable to people?
I don't think it would hurt. Yeah, I think it would be another a bonus.
Okay, monthly tweet. Just account pointing to section on the website. There is some work that's being discussed, I think, in the admin repo or the TSC repo, can't remember, about like a quarterly collaborator spotlight. I think that sort of fits in with, like, hey, if you spotlight the collaborators doing the different work, they're coming from all these different places, that kind of helps a bit. Quarterly spotlight. I don't know, any other ideas of what we can do to try and get the message to the right places?
So I think on this side, I have the feeling that having the ambassador program would help a lot
Right, okay.
to like as a like I would have that as a priority and then use that as a vehicle to sort of spread the information that we want to, because we will have people, I don't know, making blog posts, making tweets,
Yep.
making talking about that in podcasts, so that like, okay, this is like for this year we want to talk about these topics, and this is the vehicle, for example, or I feel that's something that like once you find the way to communicate with people, then you can add whatever content uh, you want. So
Right, okay, yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense to me. It's like that's a key part to, so we could, I wrote down we can add a section of the website that's kind of separate. We could ask for that monthly tweet. I think the ramping up quarterly collaborator spotlight might help, as well as that ambassador. But then I agree, maybe the rest of the effort is like through the ambassador program, something like that.
Yeah, I think especially because the ambassadors would be representative of communities that may not have the reach that Node would, right? Like, I would have to be following Node's Twitter in order for me to see the post from Node themselves, or even
Right.
going to the Node website. Whereas there are certainly ambassadors that I would be sort of closer contact to that would be able to do the advocacy work in a much more kind of impactful way to my small, tiny community. So I think having that is a really good way to sort of diversify from the main project and the main channels of communication to those smaller subsets that could really have a nice long lasting reach.
Okay. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Okay. So like, and if anybody else comes up with any other ideas, we can throw them in. But it sounds like at least there's a few ideas here, and the ambassador program, I agree, kind of should be one of our priorities going forward. Is like, how do we get that off the ground and get things going? That thing I think takes us to the end of our agenda. Is there any other topics or things that people think we should chat about this week?
yeah, no, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
No, I just want to say that so the new website went live. I think
Right.
yeah, it's big news. So like we should I think it's important to have some cooperation with the people from website to sort of, because that's the channel for a lot like new information, and also we should promote the new website and talk about that. Like also give some recognition to people who worked on it.
Yeah, that really was a huge accomplishment. It's there was a long effort, and like, I really, I know there's lots of people who were involved in doing it, but Claudio really, it was key in getting it across the line because of like the persistence and sort of dedication to working on it for a long time that it took, and managing all the, like, not strictly a technical issue, but managing all the different views and that kind of stuff and getting consensus. It's like that was really a huge effort. And so I think really good congratulations are definitely due there. And to everybody who helped make it happen, it's pretty amazing to see it actually take place.
I'm glad to hear this was the case because I went to the Node site not too long ago, a couple days ago, came back today and said, whoa, did I just completely miss a whole bunch of the entire side in that bar and all these pages that I was looking for? And so I'm glad to confirm that it was major changes. And it's great. I definitely very helpful.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, and the switch over was just, I think it was almost like yesterday, to be honest. So
One big part of the website that has not been talked a lot is the learn part. Like that has been improved quite a lot, and I think it would be nice to promote it a little bit because like how it has some like AI search that allows to get documentation faster, and like I suggest to check it out and like promote it.
yeah, definitely. That's almost like, again, if we had our advocacy program up, that could be one of the top, like, hey, here's what's to promote in the next little while, including search, which is like a key thing, right? Like we never had search before, right? And so yeah, I think I'm hoping, like Claudio, talks with, I know, the foundation staff pretty regularly, so hopefully that they'll be promoting that as well. I know they were involved in the process, I suspect so, but yeah, we should. It's unfortunate. Yeah, the advocacy program, it would be great to be able to be, add things like this to a list of like, hey, here are the topics that are important. And Richard, sounded like you had something to, just before we closed out, sounded like you had something to add.
Sure, yeah. So I guess just my initial thought exercise is what does Node look like 10 years from now if we are successful in terms of completing this roadmap of the 10 years that we would like to see kicked off? What would that look like in 10 years? What would I be talking about?
Yeah, I think that's a tough question, right? To predict the future. The thing that we did work on in past years, and what I would point you to is and I'm just navigating to the link so I can paste it into the chat.
Okay.
We've added a couple of docs in the node repo itself under contributing, and those include technical priorities.
Okay.
So this is like, the areas that, and this is likely to be a like an ongoing thing where it, we have a collaborator summits twice a year. We chat at those collaborator summits and we use it to tweak the technical priorities. But like, if you wanted to say where our focus is now in terms of future things, that's the list that we worked on. And we've got technical values which kind of drive the move forward. So that would be my, like, okay, even at one level higher, this is the things that are going to guide the future direction in terms of like developer experience is one of our top priorities, stability, and so forth. And the what else would I add? We do also have in the GitHub repo, it's the next 10 repo. We have a number of things like our constituencies, which are like, hey, here are all the stakeholders that we think we should be thinking about, right? When we're thinking about what the projects need, and here is what we think they need. So we've gone through that whole process of like, hey, who are our constituencies? What do we think we need? What are our technical priorities? So that's what we've got in terms of predicting the future. We don't have like a roadmap because like, unlike one of the, that comes a bit from our governance, we don't have a paid set of people that we can actually say, go work on this. So people work on what they think is interesting and important to them.
Sure.
My 2 cents is that I think it will be evolutionary as opposed to revolutionary, like other languages. Node has been around for long enough now that we're not likely to like completely look at something different in 10 years from now, right? It's likely to be, we've made progress, added new APIs like the ESM and so forth. But like this is where, if it's like we have people who are like, Node absolutely needs to do X to be successful 5 years from now, that's where we should have that discussion, right? And like, what does that mean? And that's where those priorities come from, but none of those are really revolutionary things, right? They're more like, yeah, we know that our core values is around HTTP, so we need to have a better story on that, and like ESM getting, so I don't think it would be nice to have a more concrete answer, but like that's the answer we've worked so far. And but if you have ideas of like, oh well, or you see people saying like Node really needs this to still be successful, that's the kind of discussions we want to foster, right?
Yeah, I think certainly, from a technical aspect, the work will never end for sure, as quickly as the internet evolves. But I do think it seems to me, just looking at the agenda and what we have here, that I would certainly like to see, and am hopeful that the next 10 years involves more awareness and a very community-driven approach in terms of contribution awareness. Like I said, to me, it's when I speak to software engineers of my ilk, they oftentimes will think of Node as this sort of like this tool that you install in order for you to do the work that you are actively working on, engaging in those communities you're contributing to, in those communities you are donating to. But Node is this thing that it's the thing that goes behind all of those other things.
Yeah.
And bringing that to the front to me is something that's so important, because oftentimes working with JavaScript, I will mention Node, and I'll get even software engineers that'll say, Node, what do you mean you're using Node? You mean you're using React or TypeScript, right?
Right.
Or you're using some sort of framework, right? You're using Next or Vue or something else, right? Like they completely forget that the entire thing runs on a Node environment.
Right. If there was no Node, none of those would, like
exactly
nothing else. Exactly. And I think that's a little bit of our challenge, right? Which is everybody takes it for granted, right? And then like we also get much as we've tried, people still don't have the sense of like, hey, I can come and contribute, right? Which
exactly,
I think like versus some projects, we're very, very open, right? Like if you come and submit a PR, it can quite likely land, right? And we want to, we prioritize. You can see in like our onboarding, we prioritize first time contributors and all that kind of stuff. But it's still, I run into people and, who are like, oh, I don't, can I really come to the meetings and just join? It's like, yes, just come on down. And same with like getting involved. On the flip side, I do know like it can be a bit daunting to jump into like Node, the Node core, and it's like it's in C. There's a whole bunch of implementation C. It's not obvious for even people who've been working in the project for a long time. Like there's a breadth of stuff. So like when I have to jump into like some new area, it's like, okay, figuring out how this all works. And so I can understand it's like a challenge from that perspective, but like
totally,
we really do try and get the people in there. But anyway, I think you were saying like it's part of it where it's a little invisible sometimes, right? And then just unfortunate.
Yeah, I would certainly love the next 10 years to bring visibility to Node in a way that I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing that Node has become so ubiquitous that it is behind the scenes on everything. It is everywhere. That's sort of the beauty of that, right? Like in the way that Linux powers absolutely everything without being front and center of, you know, putting a penguin in front of everyone's screen. There is some natural beauty to the fact that it is just so ubiquitous that
Yeah.
without thought, it is powering everything so seamlessly, right? When people are having problems in production or in servers, it's not the Node environment that they're running into, or hopefully it's not that. If it is, it's something that was set up improperly. Oftentimes it is something completely secondary to that. So in a way, I do love the just sort of that ubiquitous nature of Node. I would certainly love to see and myself be more active in terms of that roadmap for the next 10 years of being able to bring it to the forefront and remind people that, you know, we are to empower this amazing platform that we've, you know, that is built and that we use on a day-to-day basis that has, you know, even more potential. And if we want to see these things, you know, if we want to see this platform evolve in a way that takes advantage of emerging technologies and trends in the industry, then you too can be a contributor.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like, it's kind of, I find it interesting because, like, say, you know, I've been looking a little bit at the AI space, and like there's lots of Python there because that's what it came out of. But some of the leading libraries, if they support something else, it's JavaScript, right? So it's Python and JavaScript. And I've seen some other people, like even internal at Red Hat, who are working on the AI strategy and stuff. It's kind of like you hear, well, are we going to convert everybody to Python, or do we need to bring stuff to existing developers? And like, yeah, I mean, I obviously Python may gain significant sort of presence because of this, but like,
Right.
I don't think all websites are going to convert over to Python, right? Like, so,
Right.
you know, some of those that intersection with JavaScript and those other things is still like an important thing that will be interesting, but it's sort of like peripheral, as you just said, right? Like it's, you know, when you're working there, Node is being used and supports making things happen, but it doesn't necessarily, like, you know, it's not necessarily obvious to the people. Like a really good example is running a local model. There's a project called, like, I think it's Node Llama CPP. And behind the scenes, it uses Node add-on API, which I think is cool since I help keep that working. And it like transparently installs C binaries, which lets you load the model and run it in your process. And it's like magic, right? You just npm
Amazing.
install, you're running a local
Amazing.
thing, and you're like, that's the sort of magic of Node, is that it enables those kind of things, but you don't really realize that, right?
Exactly.
You know, you're like,
Exactly.
so
Completely agree. Yeah, absolutely agree with that.
and I think, you know, your thinking comes at the time where, like, we looked at the last few years where we focused mostly on the technical side, and I think it's kind of aligned with, we said, okay, we've got a story there. I can point you to these documents. We'll refine that over time, but like our real focus now is like these other things, like what can we do for advocacy? What can we do to maybe get companies more involved in providing support? And so I think that's what we'll be thinking about this year for a large amount.
Very cool. Look forward to it.
Okay, anything else we should chat about before we close out this time? Okay, well, if not, I mean, thanks for everybody's time. Good conversation, and for the steps we've agreed to do till next time. So we'll see everybody in GitHub and next time around.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.